In this video, we're going to have a look at how can we create an application that's able to read from an RSS feed. So what is an RSS feed? So RSS is a format for delivering regularly changing web content. Many news-related sites, weblogs, and other online publishers syndicate their content as an RSS feed to whoever wants it. So just as an example of an RSS feed, you could go to feeds.news24.com articles fin24 tech RSS. And this is an example of an RSS feed. It's a feed of data that keeps on changing the whole time. So every day there will be a few news articles that will come onto this web page. And then you can write apps or just open up your web page and follow these data that they place on their websites. So the one thing that we are interested in now is how to read this document. So we've got the link online, there's the link, but how can we read this document now into our application? So now if you right click on your page and you go to view page source, you'll see that your source looks like this. So there's we've got the web page, HTTP, there's the web page. But are we able now to actually read from this web page and get the data that we want from this web page? So you'll see this is an RSS document. The encoding is UTF-8. And then you've got a title and a link and a generator and docs and last build date and publish date. And then after that, you start getting items. And this is a new item. There's a new item. There's a new item again, a new item again, a new item again. And these items are what we see here as that titles there and with some explanation and an image and so forth. So this web page was designed to take that feed, read the data from this XML file and display it like this. And that's essentially what we want to do in our application. So how can we read the data from this web page that looks like an XML document, or which is an XML document, and then how can we read this data and display it something like this? Okay, but we'll do this in an Android application, and I'm not going to do everything to display everything like this. You can go and have a look at how to do that, but for now I'm going to show you how to get, for instance, what is the title, the description, the link, and so forth. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a new application. So there's the new application, main activity. I've done nothing at all. I just created a new blank application. So for this to work, we need to go to our manifest file and add a user's permission of internet there, because we're going to connect to the internet to that file. So that's very important that you have this there. And that's basically all you need in your manifest file. Now, if we go to the main activity quickly, I'm just going to remove this constraint layout there and use a normal linear layout. And I'm going to set the linear layout's orientation to be vertical. And I'm going to remove that text view there. And then if I go to design now, let me just open up this. Right, let's get the palette there quickly. And what I want to do here is to basically just drag in a list view. So I'm going to drag in a list view there to just display a list of those items. And then I'm going to give the list view an ID. So I'm going to call it LV, let's call it list view RSS or whatever. And then go to main activity and let's set up that list view. So it's going to be a list view. And I'm going to call it LV RSS. And then inside of the onCreate, we can set it up. So I'm going to say list view RSS equals, it is a list view. So you need to cast it to a list view, find view by ID, r.id.lv, LV RSS. Okay, so then your list view is set up. And to that list view, we can also then set an on item click listener. And I'm just going to choose there the on item click listener. So when we click an item in the list view, we want to take it to a specific website. So I'll show you that also today. So basically what we'll get, I'm just going to get the title, and you get the title or the description or the link or anything the exact same way. So I'm not going to go through everything. So we're going to get the title there, display the title in the list view. And when we click on the title, it will take us to the link. So we're basically going to extract the title and the link. But remember that you can extract any of these values that you want. So let's go back to the Android application. And one of the first things that I'm going to use here in order to be able to make a connection, we're going to call the method public input stream. what we're going to pass through is the input stream. What we're going to return is the input stream, and then we're going to call the method get input stream. And then what we will accept here as an argument for the input stream will be a URL, and that's the java.net URL object there, and it's going to be called URL. So now inside of this method, we're going to have a try and we're going to have a catch block there. So there's the try and the catch block. And we're going to catch an input-output exception. And let's call it E or whatever you want to call it. And then if there's an exception, we're going to return null. And if there's not an exception, obviously it gives you an error because we haven't tried anything in the block that could throw an exception. So let's just try opening a connection now. So what we want to do here is to call open connection on that URL object. So we're going to say return URL dot open connection. And now this open connection method returns an instance that represents a connection to the remote object referred to by the URL. So basically what we want to open in this connection will be this website there, that HTTP. So we'll set up that link now. So this is basically just opening the connection for us. And then on that open connection, we call get input stream, which will get the input stream for us. And the input stream returns then a stream that reads from this open connection that we've got. Okay, so that will basically just give us an open connection to that web page so that we can start reading from it. Okay, so we'll do that part now. So now the next part that we'll need is we need to go into the background and a new thread. So I'm going to use the async task class to actually start reading from that document. Okay, so let's define this class. I'm going to say public class, and we're going to call it, let's say, process in background. And then we're going to say extends and then async task. So I'm going to say async task, and then we need to supply the parameter types there. So we're going to have an integer there as the first one, an integer as the second one. If you want to update it, and maybe a string there, it doesn't really matter how you declare them. Obviously your first value there, we'll talk about those values on where we use it, but the middle value we're not actually going to use because that one is used for a specific value that you increment, or a progress bar that you increment. And the first integer is the one that we're going to pass in, that will come back to your doing background method, and this is what your doing background method will return. So it depends on what you want to do. Actually, I think we could have just said void for all of those. But in any case, so let's go to code, override methods. And what I want is the on pre-execute. That's before we go into the background. And then I want to add the on, or the do in background method that actually does something in the background. And then the last method that we want there is then the on post execute method. So it's the on pre-execute, the do in background, and the on post execute. So the variable there, integer, is the type that you accept in your do in background, and we're not going to pass in anything there. So what we could have done there is to make that one also a string, and then when we call this, we pass in that URL. That's if you wanted to do that. The second one we're not actually going to use there, so we could just pass in void there. That's no problem, because that's just incrementing a progress dialog or whatever you want to do there. And then string will be what your do in background method returns. Okay, so you can change those variables as you would like them. Now in the on pre-execute, we're going to do the following. We're going to set up a progress dialog there to start showing. So I'm going to say progress dialog, Android app progress dialog. Let's call it PDIA, progress dialog, or progress dialog, equals new progress dialog. And then you need to pass in the context. So I'm just going to call, or just going to say main activity dot this. Now in my on pre-execute, then we can start showing it. So I'm going to say progress dialog dot set message first, and we can say something like busy loading RSS feed, please wait, something like that. Please wait, and then a dot 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 at the end. Okay, so that's the progress dialog, the message, and then we can start showing the progress dialog. And now remember that somewhere in your on-post execute, never forget that you should actually go and dismiss this thing. So I like to do that right from the start so that you know that it is dismissed right at the end when we're done with everything. Okay, so now the next part that we can do now is to go into the do in background method. We will leave that return statement for later on. So in this do in background method, I'm going to have a try and a catch block again. And now there's a few catch blocks that we're going to have here. So I'm going to type all of them, and we'll see as we code where we're going to use all of them. Okay, so the first exception that we want to catch there is the malformed URL exception. If there's something wrong with the URL that we typed, then we're going to catch, and we can do there whatever we want. We can just set it to a specific value or whatever you want to do. So maybe we could create an exception object there at the top and set it to null. And then when an exception occurs, we can just say exception equals this E then. And then if you want to, you can return that as what the do in background method returns, that exception. So we'll see what we need as we carry on with this example. So then the next catchphrase there will be an XML pool parser exception. So that's when we try to basically extract data, and it throws you an exception there. Then we can also set that exception object to E there. And then the last catch that we're going to have there is the input output exception, just a normal IO exception that goes along with reading from anything. And then we're going to set that one to E as well. So those are the exceptions that we'll catch in this try block. And now we can actually start creating what we need to do in order to retrieve the data from that website or from that RSS feed. So now the very first thing that we need to do is to set up our URL object. Okay, so that will just be URL, let's call it URL, equals new URL. And then you need to pass in the URL that you want to retrieve your RSS feed from. So now this basically this website that we've got there. So I want to take that part there and just copy it from the HTTP. That's the whole link that we want to copy. And that should be in double quotation marks. So if you paste it there, you can see that we've got a new URL and it's defined as this specific RSS feed. Right, and then the next one, we need to go and say XML pool parser factory. So we're going to create a new pool parser factory object, and we're going to talk about that one now, equals XML pool parser factory dot new instance. So basically what happens here now is we create a new instance of the pool parser factory that can be used to create XML pool parsers. And the XML pool parsers will help us to actually retrieve the data from the XML document. And then the next one, we're going to say factory dot set namespace aware. And then the awareness you can set to either true or false. So I'm going to set this one to false. Now, what does this mean? It just specifies whether the parser produced by this factory will provide support for XML namespaces or not. So in this case, we're setting false, so we're not going to provide support for XML namespaces. And then we're going to create an XML pool parser. So there's the XML pool parser. Let's call it XPP equals factory, which is the object that we created there, the pool parser factory. And remember what that one does. It creates an instance of a pool parser factory that can be used to create XML pool parsers. And now we're creating the XML pool parser. So we're going to say factory dot new pool parser, which will create us a new pool parser. And this is basically just a new instance of an XML pool parser using the currently configured factory features. And this will help us now to extract data from that XML document. Right, and now that we've got an XML pool parser now, we can actually set the input. Where do we want to start reading from? So we're going to say xpp.setInput, and you need to basically give the input stream there that you're going to use. And you remember this method that we called getInputStream that returns us a new input stream. So we're going to say xpp.setInput, call that method, get input stream, and then we're going to pass in the URL. So it's that object that we defined there at the top. Okay, now if you look at the error there, it needs, okay, we'll get to that part now. And let's just put the second argument there. The second argument will then be, what is the specific input that you're reading? So it's going to be a UTF_8 there. And that is then taking care of that error there. So it's UTF-8. We're basically just indicating that the encoding of this document is UTF-8 encoding. So we get the input stream, which makes a new connection, and we can start reading using this XML pool parser object, start reading from this URL XML document that is UTF-8 encoded. Right, and then we're going to start off with a Boolean variable here that I'm going to declare. Let's call it inside item, and I'm going to declare this one to be false right from the start. Now, let me just explain that quickly. If you look at your XML document now, you can see that we've got opening tags and we've got closing tags. So basically what we want to say, if we say we set up a Boolean variable called inside the item, and we're going to say false there. Basically, the data that I want to extract is inside of these item tags. So I'm going to have a Boolean variable to tell me when am I inside of the item tag. So if I'm inside of the item tag, I can start extracting the title and the description and the link and whatever you want to extract. So that's what we're going to do with this variable called inside item. Let's just open up some space. And let's carry on with the rest of the application. Now for the next part, we're going to say int event type equals. We're going to go to that XPP, XML pool parser object of ours, and we're going to call get event type. So when we start reading from it, when we call get event type, this returns the type of the current event, whether it's a start tag, an end tag, if it's the start of the document or where we are currently. And obviously we start reading right at the start of the document. And then we go to maybe an opening tag, and we go to another opening tag and another opening tag, and then we get to a closing tag and so forth. So as we read, this event type will basically tell us where we are. Okay, so now we can use a while loop to run through every element inside of that XML document. So while the event type is not equal to XML pool parser dot end document. So we'll keep on looping while the event type is not the end of the document. So obviously we want to start reading and keep on reading until we reach the end of the document. And when we reach the end of the document, this while loop will stop executing. Now inside the while loop, we can go and search for if the event type is equal to XML pool parser dot start tag. So if it's a start tag, then we are interested in the specific type of start tag. So obviously right at the start, there's a start tag, there's a start tag, and there's basically a closing tag or an end tag. So if it's a start tag, then we're going to say, let's check what is the tag's name. So we're going to say if xpp.get name, which will get you the name of the tag. So xpp.getEventType will tell you whether it's an opening tag, a closing tag, or is it the start of the document or the end of the document. But calling xpp.getName gets you the name of the specific tag you're in. So that will return channel or title or link or item. Okay, so we're going to say if the xpp.getName dot equals, but let's use the ignore case there. If it equals ignore case item, then we are interested in the data of that tag. So if you look at it, it's going to go through and it will find the first item tag there. So if it's a start tag and that tag is the opening tag, then we know the next time we read, we're inside of the item tag. So inside of this if statement, we'll just basically go and say inside item, that Boolean variable should be set to true. So now we are inside of the item tag. If it's an opening tag and it's called item, we are inside of the item tag. And then we set that thing to true. Okay, the else part that could be happening there is obviously let's just go and test for xpp.getName again. If the name dot equals ignore case, and then you can have a look at what you want to extract. So let's say title there, or description, or link, or whatever. Okay, so let's just go down, and we'll name this one the first one that's called title there. So if it's a title, then we just want to make sure, because if you look at this one, there's a title there and there's a title there. So we must first make sure that we are inside of an item tag before trying to extract the title. Okay, so what we're going to do here for this if statement, if the name is title, we want to first make sure, are we inside of an item tag? So then we're going to test if inside item. If we're inside the item tag, then we can do what we want to do. And we can now start extracting the data. So to extract the data, I'm just going to create an array list at the top. So I'm going to say array list of type string, and let's call it titles. So just Alt-Enter for your import there. And we're going to have another array list that will save us the links. So let's call this one links. Okay, and then let's just set them up here. So it's going to be titles equals new array list, not array list, array list of type string. And then for the links, the same thing, links equals new array list, and it's also of type string. So now we've got the two array lists set up, and now we can add data to them. So if we are then at the title tag, and the title tag is inside of the item tag, then we know that's data that we actually want to extract. So how do we extract then the data in that tag? So we will say, and my array list is called titles there. So I'm going to say titles.add, which adds a new string object. And the string object that we want to add is xpp, which is my XML pool parser object, dot next text. So now if we are inside of the item tag and you call next text, it will create or basically return to you the text inside of the title tag. So in this case, it's going to retrieve this part there between the opening and the closing tag. Okay, so that will give me then the title tags information. Then I'm going to basically add another if statement there, else if xpp.getName, and you can add as many of these as you like depending on what you want to extract. So the next thing I want to extract here is this link. So that's the new tag that I'll open up there. So let's just call that one link. Again, I want to make sure that it's inside of the item tag. So I'm going to say if inside item, yes, then let's extract it. And I'm going to add this to the links array list. And to that one, we also just going to call xpp.nextText, which will also retrieve me the text. Okay, now let's look at this else if statement here for this if, where we test basically if we are at the start tag or an opening tag. The else if there could be if the event type is equal to XML pool parser.end tag. So now I'm not testing for the start tag if it's the end tag, but I want to test something else also. If it's the end tag and at the same time xpp.getName.equals ignore case is an item tag. So if it's an end tag, a closing tag, and the tag's name is item, then I want to go and set that inside item again to false. Okay, so when we enter the while loop, we check, is it a start tag or an opening tag? If it is, we will go and check if it's an item tag. If it's an item tag, we set the item tag to true. Then the loop runs again. So let's just look at this. Let's say we're basically at the publish date there, started reading now, and we're checking for all the tags. So if we are at the publish date there, the pub date opening tag, this while loop will run. It goes in, it sees it's a start tag. It's not item, it's not title, it's not link. So now how do we increment this whole while loop? So just after everything here, we will say event type should be xpp.next, which will increment and go to the next tag. Okay, so now we increment and then we test again. If it's a start tag, so now you'll see if we're there and it goes to the next tag, this one is now a closing tag. So then we'll say if the event type is a start tag, well, that will not be true. It will go to the else if and check, yes, it is an end tag, but it's not an item tag. So we just go to the next one. And the next one then moves to the item tag there. So now it tests if it's a start tag, yes it is. If it's an item tag, yes it is, set inside item to true, and then go to the next one. So now it goes to the next one, there's title, and then it says, we go into the while loop, it's a start tag, yes, it's not item, no, but it's called title. So if it's called title, and it's inside the item, which it is, we start extracting it. So I hope you understand this whole process of getting data from that XML file online, which is an RSS feed. Okay, so now the next thing that we can do here, we are in the do in background. We can actually return this exception object now if you wanted to. So let's say return exception. It's going to give you a problem there because you want to change that variable there to exception, or the type there to exception, which means you need to change that also to exception if you want to get hold of that exception that occurred. Okay, so right at the start, all the errors are done and we're returning that exception. And what you return from the do in background directly goes to your on post execute. So that declaration there must then also be an exception. Okay, so it depends on what you want to return for your specific method. So the do in background method then makes the connection, it reads, it adds all the titles and all the links. And I know that in title position 0, I will get the same link at the same position 0 as well. Okay, so now in the on post execute, we've dismissed our progress dialog. And now we can, maybe just before that, we can set the data to our array or to our list view. So we're going to say array adapter. And let's make this one of type string, obviously, because our titles there that we want to put to it is of type string. So we're going to say array adapter of type string, let's call it adapter, equals new array adapter. And then the type, again, must be string. And now we're going to say the first argument is the context. So I'm just going to pass in main activity.this. The second argument is your layout file. Now I'm not creating a custom layout here, so I'm going to use one of the predefined layouts. So it's going to be android.r.layout.simple list item 1, and then we can use headlines there, not headlines. What did we call it? Titles. Let's call it, or pass in the titles array list there. And then that is the new array adapter. Now, in order to set that array adapter to our list view, we can just go and call lv rss.setAdapter, and we're going to set that adapter to this new adapter that we just created. And that will essentially make the connection and then show it on the list view. But now you can see we haven't called process in background, so obviously somewhere here we should call, let's just call it there, a new process in background dot execute. And remember, the value that you can pass in there is your first type, so we can actually pass in an integer there, and that integer that you pass in will be whatever your do in background accepts. So actually we can just make that one also void because we're not going to pass in anything. Okay, so that's the async task. It will then start running and it will show the list view. But now let's say we want to click on an item in the list view, and now we want to show the links that was retrieved. Okay, so what we'll do here is to say URI, and that's android.net, and then we're going to say, just call it whatever you want, equals URI.parse, and then the the specific link that you want to connect to. So in this case, I'm going to say, go to my links array list, which has got all my links as strings. I'm going to call get, and then the position that the guy clicked in the list view will be this position. So that's also the same position that I want to retrieve from that link, or from the links array list. Okay, so that's basically the web page I want to open up, which is links.getPosition. And if you look at the link there, you can see it's a web page that will be opened up. Okay, so that's the first connection that we need to make, is make a connection to that web page, and then we need to use an implicit intent to open up that web page. So I'm going to say intent equals new intent, Alt enter for your import, and then the first argument there will be intent dot action view, because you view a web page, so the action is view, and passing in URI, which is the connection now to that web page. And then we're going to say start activity, and we're going to pass in this intent. And now when the user clicks on an item in the list, it will go to that specific web page and open it up using an implicit intent. So let's just run this quickly and see how it actually shows on the virtual device. Okay, so here we are. You see mine actually went very, very fast. I didn't even see that progress bar there. So it depends on your internet connection, obviously. But there's my list now. The very first one there is Competition Commission joins, data must fall. And you can see on the website itself, there it is on the website. The first one there, the Competition Commission has set in motion a market inquiry and so forth. But there's the title, Competition Commission joins, data must fall. So there it is. The second one there is actually backup solutions key to fighting downtime. And here you can see. So I'm reading exactly what is on this online document. And now if I click on the first one there, you will see the first one goes to tech news competition or whatever there. So if I click on it, let's look at the web page. You can see tech news. It's exactly what I extracted there from the link part, and it opens up this now in a new web page using an implicit intent. And you can see there the web page opens, and then this is then basically how you can read data from an RSS feed. I hope that you've enjoyed this video.